This week, we'll be running a variety of online sessions taking place every evening until Thursday, 30th of November, to give you the opportunity to find out more about our masters at the Institute of Continuing Education. Course information sessions like this one, covering each course in our master's portfolio, will take place at 6:30 every evening, followed by a series of panel sessions from 7:30 with our students, academics, and representatives from various colleges. In addition to our live sessions, we also have a number of video resources on our website, giving you further information on funding options, the application process, college matriculation, student support, and interview preparation. If you miss any of the sessions or aren't available to attend, then you can watch the recordings, which will be available on the website the day, 24 hours the event. Links to the events and resources are shared in the chat and will also be sent via email after this session. Next slide, please. Established 150 years ago in 1873, we were the first university-led continuing education provider in the world. Today, we offer a wide range of courses to other learners, including short online and residential weekend courses, international summer programs, and award-bearing part-time undergraduate and postgraduate qualifications, covering a number of subject areas from archaeology to genomic medicine. We also act as the admitting body for all MSt courses within the University of Cambridge, with our MSt students becoming members of a Cambridge college upon commencement of the course. ICE is a place where professional networks are formed, friendships are made, and the transformative power of learning is recognized. Next slide, please. Upon acceptance of an offer, you will become a member of a University of Cambridge college, which will grant you the same level of support as full-time college students. As well as having access to standard college resources, you will be allocated a college tutor who is responsible for your welfare and pastoral support, and your college will confirm arrangements such as your university card, matriculation, and graduation events. We work with a number of different colleges across our MSt courses. The current cohorts of the MSt Architecture Degree Apprenticeship are matriculated with Homerton College, and I can confirm that the next cohort will also be matriculated with Homerton. If you already have a pre-existing affiliation with a college, you will be able to state this in your application. Watch our informative video, link in the chat, or join the Meet the College panel session this evening for more information on our college partnerships and to hear from the colleges themselves. Next slide, please. As mentioned earlier, today in the panel, we have myself, Vanessa Chiliemi, Dr. Timothy Brittain-Catlin, course leader for the MSt Architecture Degree Apprenticeship. We have representatives from the apprenticeships team, Dr. Rasoul Khandan, and Susanna Lewis from the academic team, and Eleanor Lee, learner representative in her third year. Shortly, we will take you through what you can expect from the MSt in Architecture Degree Apprenticeship, including entry requirements, teaching style, module content, and assessment. The apprenticeships team will take you through what kind of support we can provide you in your application, and we will have time reserved at the end of the session to answer your questions. So please send us your questions via the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. I will now hand you over to my colleague, Dr. Timothy Brittain-Catlin. Tim, over to you.
Hello, thank you, Vanessa. Good evening to everybody. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I'm going to say at the beginning a few words about the structure of the course and its purpose and how it works and the individual subjects, but I'm actually going to spend most of the time we have available to take you through the projects that our apprentices have completed as they make their way through the 3 years. I think it's very important to see that the quality of the work, the standard of academic achievement, is exactly the same as it would be in a full-time course, both at this university or indeed any other leading course in the country. The course is prescribed to part 2, that's the MSt part, but then what happens to apprentices who successfully complete that is that they lead straight on to the part 3, which in the world of apprenticeships is called the endpoint assessment. That means that if you are completing your part 1 this coming summer, you can move directly onto us the following September if we accept you, and arrive at your part 3 probably quicker than any other route, providing that you complete all the parts of it successfully. It doesn't make any difference, of course. We welcome very strongly apprentices who've been working post-Part 1 for some time now. We hope very much, and we always encourage a very wide range of architectural practices to send apprentices to us, because it's an important part of all of our course that architects in training work together with other people and get a wide experience of what the architectural profession is like for those who practice in any part of it, large or small, city-based or rural. Everyone is welcome to apply, and it adds a great deal, I think, to the character of the course when we have these mixtures. It's a central part of our teaching that apprentices work in teams, and that means that everyone learns very quickly from each other. And I expect that Eleanor will say a word about what it's like to do this as you make your way through. Now, the thing that is different about applying for an apprenticeship as opposed to a regular Part 2 is that the first move needs to be made by your employer. And when admissions open in January, you'll find on the website the application form in the form of an expression of interest. And once that's returned to us and signed by your employer, then we can open up the apprenticeship, the application system in the normal way, and then things become a bit more normal from there on. The way in which the apprenticeship works is this: the Part 2 part of it takes 3 years. You start in September, you complete the final exam board in June, the following in the 3rd year. And during that period, you do 2 things. You come to us for 2-week sessions. There are 3 of these fortnight sessions in every year. One of them is always at the beginning of September. One of them is generally at the beginning of December, the next one starting next week. And the 3rd one is sometime around Easter. So you come to us, and that takes up roughly 30 out of your 46, 47 apprenticeship days, because apprenticeship time is calculated on the basis of the equivalent of a day a week. So you have 6 weeks with us, and in that time you work in small teams on design projects. And what you do between those residential sessions is you individualize the projects in the first part, of course, so that your examiners can see that you yourself are able to meet the standards. But much more interestingly, I think, you can respond to feedback, both the feedback at the crits here and also any feedback you might get from anyone else outside. And we always recommend to our apprentices that they present their team design work in their offices when they return after a residential, to get a bit more input and a bit more feedback from those that they work with. This very close relationship between what apprentices are doing in the office and what they're doing with us is enormously important to us. And we put as one of our priorities right from the start the fact that every apprentice emerges from each individual residential module with a particular skill or skills that they didn't have before, and which they can put into practice as soon as they arrive. The application deadline, as you can see, is not until the end of April next year. So there's plenty of time to contact us and talk about any part of the process. And I personally always welcome any conversations with you, whether you're an applicant or whether you're a practice director or a practice HR. We're very keen to hear from you and talk about the details of some of this. The way in which these residential modules are structured as follows. So there is a first session, it's there in the middle, which is on history, theory and research methods. And that is because, as with every graduate Cambridge course, we expect all your work to be backed up by a high standard of research. In the first session, what happens is that you're introduced to people, researchers from different backgrounds. Some are architectural historians, but some are working, for example, in material innovation. We have planners, we have people who work in transport infrastructure, we have people who work in the amenity societies, people who capture oral histories and so on. Basically, our apprentices are taken through the entire range of different ways of researching so as to know how to present their work to the highest possible standards. But then follow a series of thematic design modules with masterclasses. The first one is called Working in Teams. And what that is actually not only to learn how to work with team. We have a professional teamwork trainer who comes from an architectural background, but also to prepare, to learn about brief preparation and precedent studies at a professional level. It's basically teaching our apprentices what stage 2 in RIBA terms looks like. In the 3rd module of the first year, our apprentices do a digital fabrication workshop, which is led by 2 members of the Cambridge Centre for Natural Material Innovation. So you're taught by people at the cutting edge of the development of this. The Department of Architecture here has a new digital fabrication workshop, which is available, like all the department facilities, to all our apprentices at any time, not just when you're here. At the beginning of the second year, there is a module on facade design that usually takes the form of recladding an existing building, because we take very seriously the importance of learning how to remodel, reclad and reuse and readapt existing buildings. It's a major priority for the profession as a whole, and that forms a part pretty much of every single module that we do. And what our apprentices do there, and I'll be showing you examples of that work in a minute, is take an existing building, maybe a building from the 1960s, for example, a concrete frame building or a steel frame, we've done both now, and reclad it to contemporary standards for environmental design and for construction design. The next one below that is the urban design module. That's led again this year by Proctor and Matthews. That takes the form of a week of research into the planning and historical background of a settlement, usually outside Cambridge, and our apprentices then create their own design schemes. And finally, out of these group classes is the Sustainable Building Project, which is the large project at the end of the second year, when our apprentices work in teams with a leading practitioner to design a new building to the highest levels of sustainability and environmental awareness. In the third year, there are two elements. One of them is an individual design project, which our apprentices essentially manage themselves, but they do this with two forms of support. They do it, first of all, with support from people who lead the masterclass. It's currently Charles Holland, and also with the support of their personal supervisor, because as is usually the case with Cambridge graduate courses, every apprentice has a supervisor who will accompany them all the way through. And finally, the first introduction to management, practice and law happens in that third year. You're taught to part 3 level, and then once you've achieved your part 2, you're then examined to part 3 level. I'd like then to move on to Eleanor Lee and invite her to say a few words about what the experience has been of working on this course.
Thank you, Tim. Yes, hi everyone, good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Eleanor Lee, I'm a current third year apprentice. Just to give you a bit of background, I came through the University of Cambridge from the undergrad course, and having known Tim and the head of architecture at the time, was very enamoured by the MSt and the opportunities that it presented, both in contrast to the full-time architecture course and as an alternative in format to other apprenticeship courses within the country. I think one of the things excuse me, one of the things that was really beneficial to this form of apprenticeship, as Tim has touched on, is the 2-week residential format over a 1 week, every week, day out. The benefit that I suppose is that you're able to work in practice full-time and get the benefit of doing that alongside learning and working towards your part 2 and part 3. But also you get the benefit of being able to mentally separate and focus on the course over an intense 2-week period 3 times a year. You then get the opportunity to individually develop, as Tim has touched on, your version of the group working towards the portfolio at the end of the year using your study days. As Tim has mentioned, one of the most beneficial parts of that is you come to a high level of development with the group, with an assortment of colleagues of the learners, and everyone comes from a different background, from a different university, from a different practice. There's different scales of practice, there's different scales of experience, different skills, different tools, and we all share those resources and you learn from everyone. And then from that, you can then use your practice design reviews and talk to your mentor and develop a personal inflection upon what you've done in the group work. It might be that you maybe didn't disagree, or you didn't quite agree with what you did, and either you develop it in a different way having critically reflected on the group work, or you really enjoyed the project and you take it just that level of detail further. I think also what's beneficial about the apprenticeship course is that you still get the same level of learning and resources as from the University of Cambridge as you would from a full-time course. In the third year, as Tim mentioned, you do get that opportunity to do the individual design project as you would on a master's course, but the group projects almost lead you into having gained certain skills and certain understandings around industry specialisms that almost lend themselves to helping you on that individual journey. I think the great thing that personally I felt about the course is that it is a well-considered position of balancing between the academic and the practice. You get industry professionals at the forefront of each of their specialisms teaching the course, and you get your own practice and your mentors' input alongside the academic supervisors, and that all feeds into what you're doing. And as I hope you can see from the work, of which some of which is mine, thank you Tim for that, that it's a high level of work that you get out of it that can directly be input into what you do in your working day to day. On that point, one of the things that I've really learned and has allowed me to feed into what we do as a practice is I've directly learned from the sustainability modules, especially, and taken an interest in them, and the life cycle assessments and that kind of industry focus that the course takes. And I've been able to directly develop our sustainability working group alongside some of the other professionals in my company. So it's a great course and I would highly recommend it. Thank you.
Right, so we move on. I should say that Eleanor is about to appear in the second video for the course, which will be launched in January when applications open. Excuse me. I think Rasoul is going to say some words.
Thank you very much, Tim, and thank you very much, Eleanor. It's always good to see the journey that apprentices have through the program and see the success of them. So I'm not going to take too much of your time. I'm just identify some of the stages that the apprentices go through and explain a little bit about them. Obviously, if you have further questions, we can answer those questions in a Q&A sessions, or you can write to us. So there are some stages to join the program from apprenticeship point of view. As Tim mentioned, the first stage is obviously enrollment. And because it's an apprenticeship program, any enrollment should happen through your employer. So the first point of contact would be the employer comes to us and they said they have one of their employer coming to our program from the expression of interest, which Tim again mentioned, opens in sometimes in January, and then we take it from there. So there are some checks in terms of the regulation and compliance that need to happen, whether the program is suitable for those apprentices and for the employers. And from that point, you move to the induction stage when there is induction sessions, and then you will be given a handbook. Tim already mentioned some of the modules that you need to do, and it will identify the journey that you would have in the program. Then we would have something, we call it on the program. So the type of activities that you need to do to satisfy the apprenticeship side of your program. As you know, it will be paid through the levy fund, through the your employer and government. So there are some activities that you need to do, some recording of things that you need to do. For example, your recording of the job hours, all of those hours that you put towards the knowledge, skills, and behavior, and then you record them on a monthly basis. You also have something, we call it a quarterly review or tripartite review, that you meet with with your supervisor or a coach at the university, as well as the employer. So every 3 months, you will record that everything is going smoothly. If there are any gaps in the KSPs, you identify that, and then you can raise it with your supervisor and identify the training plan to be edited. At the end of the 3 years, as Tim mentioned, then it would be a gateway where you satisfy all those knowledge, skills, and behavior. You finish everything from apprenticeship point of view. You accumulate all those off-the-job hours, which is 6 hours per week for the new starters on average. And then you submit all those documents on a form that we call a gateway readiness. And you go through the gateway, and this is where you actually be prepared for something we call it endpoint assessment, where you complete all of the assessment and you finish the journey there. There are some links I provided here, so you can go through these links to see further information. And if you have any question, you can contact us via the apprenticeship at ice.ac.uk. Thank you. Back to you, Tim.
Great, that's it. Well, I think we've reached the end of the slides here. We can, if you can submit your questions, I'll just put it on to stop share so that you can see us a little bit bigger. There we are. And
there are some questions. Sorry, Tim.
Yes,
there are some questions that have come in already while others are thinking about their questions they'd like to pose. Tim, could you perhaps answer the query around particular things that applicants would need to prepare if they were to be offered an interview, and also perhaps at the same time, if somebody has an undergraduate degree that is a 2-2, could they still apply?
Yes, certainly. Very happy to address those because the answers to them are very clear. Your application is not going to be that different from an application to join a full-time Part 2 course. The difference is, of course, that we will ask you about whether or see whether you have the skills to balance the time requirements. You can see, although our system is designed exactly as Eleanor said, for you to have a proper university experience and not feel as if you're going backwards and forwards between the university and practice. Nevertheless, it does require a mature attitude to timekeeping, and that will inevitably come up. But the portfolio is a portfolio exactly as you might submit to any Part 2 application. You should include in it some work from your what you see as your best university work to date, but also perhaps examples of work that you yourself have done in practice. This portfolio becomes the principal subject for the conversation in the interview, which is exactly what you'd expect. Now, as far as applicants for 2-2s are concerned, yes, you can certainly apply. What happens in those cases is that we'll look a bit about why it is that you might then have been relatively weak compared to other applicants. But there are situations, for example, in which somebody has worked in practice for a while or so after getting their Part 1, and their university degree is not really representative of what their current skills are. So yes, if in doubt, certainly you should definitely apply.
Thank you, that's really useful. The next question is around how quickly is the teaching that takes place during residentials useful and applicable in the workplace? I don't know if Eleanor or Tim, you'd like to
let me say a word about that, and Eleanor can add to it because Eleanor sees the experience from a different point of view. One of the things that makes this course distinct is that at every module, the successful apprentices have reached the ARB Part 2 standards. So, for example, when they come out of the second module, the one that starts in December, what happens is that they have already met the ARB stat criteria for Part 2 regarding brief preparation and regarding precedent studies. When they complete the module on facade design, for example, they've met the ARB criteria for sustainable design and for structural design. So what you can see from that is that your apprentices come out at a much higher standard than what you'd expect a post Part 1 to be at already. It's very important that people demonstrate the skills so that those in the design teams in the offices in which they work can identify what it is that they can now do that they couldn't do before. It might be something like embodied carbon calculations, for example, so that they become more versatile as employers. And in fact, some of our employers don't use the term post-Part 1 architectural assistant. They call their apprentices level 7 apprentices, and then everybody knows, and that's could be clients, for example, as well as other people within the same organization, that this is not a regular post-Part 1 who might just have left university or doing a kind of sandwich before they return. This is somebody who is on a trajectory to reach a very high level of qualification fairly soon. Eleanor, would you like to add a word to that about what it's like from your point of view?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Tim. Just on top of that, I wanted to add specifically that you're constantly developing as a learner, not just specifically related to the modules, but skills alongside that, such as the soft skills that Tim's mentioned around team working, around your confidence and your communication and your understanding of the architectural role within the industry in relation to other specialisms. But you're also then developing software skills such as BIM and CAD alongside your presentation, and all of those things go hand in hand to what we do in everyday practice. And the more you do of that, the great thing is the more it feeds into what you do on a day-to-day.
Good, great. What should we address next, Susanna? I mean, some ask whether it's a disadvantage not to be in eyes before. No, of course it's not. The Institute of Continuing Education has a very large number of different courses. They are the ones that we are most closely connected with are the professional qualification courses. They're run from the Institute of Continuing Education, the apprenticeships are, because the management of the apprentices, which is what Rasoul does, is a specialist task, essentially. So there isn't any advantage and some disadvantage in splitting it up between the university departments. All that's done centrally, but it doesn't matter if you have no connection with Cambridge at all. You heard from Eleanor that she was an undergraduate student here, but she was the only one in her year, and I think subsequently there's only ever been one per year who is. It doesn't matter where you've come from. We welcome everybody.
There's a question as well for Eleanor. Could you tell us a bit more about your experience of college life and the life in Cambridge, your experiences as a student in Cambridge? What is there in addition to the actual course in terms of enjoying Cambridge University life?
Sure, of course. So to answer that quite simply, you're a student of Cambridge. You're part of the Cambridge community. You've got access to all of the lecture series and seminars and resources that the department has, including the Digital Fabrication Lab. You're also part of the college. You are a member of the college, in this case, Homerton. Therefore, you're able to attend all the events that are put on. You're part of the Master's Common Room. You can go to any of the social events that are organised. A lot of us regularly attend formals at Cambridge, both during residentials and out of residential times. And as on top of that, you're also privy to the wealth of societies and activities that go on as part of the University Cambridge lifestyle. So yeah, it's definitely something to be involved in and a great part of the experience, I think, of the MST.
Yeah, it's most important to say that an apprentice on the MST course is a graduate student at the University of Cambridge, exactly the same as any one of the many other different types of graduate students at the University of Cambridge. It isn't any kind of sort of second level. You are that, and as Eleanor says, you have access to everything. We realise that not everybody lives near enough in order to participate in person when they're not here during the residentials, but there are a lot of things that go on here. For example, the lecture series at the Martin Centre, which is the technical research centre of the Department of Architecture, the Cambridge Architectural History seminars, where anyone who enrolls will be sent a link and can watch it. It's kind of CPD. It also means that anybody who happens to be watching it in the office with you can also chalk up an hour of CPD. So you are completely a normal member of the student in that sense.
Okay, I believe that was the last question. Is that right, Susanna? Yes.
Yes, that's
Tim,
correct.
if you don't mind
Yes.
showing that slide.
That's right. Yes, I will. The very last slide is coming up in just a second. 1 minute. And you'll see
Lovely.
it. So hang on, I'm going to press several buttons at once here, but it's about to arrive. So share, and then there we are. Let's make it bigger.
That's lovely. Thank you. So
Cool.
we have come to the end of our session today. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. We hope you found the session informative. We would love to hear your thoughts via our satisfaction survey, which will be emailed to you shortly and hope to see you at our other events taking place this week. Our Meet the Colleges session featuring representatives from Homerton, Wolfson, Lucy Cavendish and Hugh Hall colleges will be starting at 7:30 this evening. There's still time to register via the link in the chat, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you very much and goodbye.